Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Energy Frontiers, proudly brought to you by the African Energy Chamber, the country's leading energy sector advocacy group. I am Justina Okechukwu, and as always, we begin with some of the biggest energy news making the headlines at this time. South Sudan state-owned Nile Petroleum Company has officially taken over the assets of Malaysian oil giant Petronas in the Sahel country. This acquisition comes after the withdrawal of Petronas caused by growing operational challenges in the region due to ongoing instability in neighboring Sudan. Egypt plans to bring in 22 shipments of liquefied natural gas during August and September, looking to ensure the availability of gas to run the country's power plants. Egypt's daily natural gas needs are currently estimated at about 6.0 billion cubic feet. Still in North Africa, Libya's National Oil Corporation has announced the arrival of major fuel shipments of 2 tankers carrying a total of 70 million liters of gasoline in Tripoli and Zawiya. The first tanker, Anwar Africa, unloaded 30 million liters of gasoline in Tripoli, while the fuel will be immediately transported to gas stations throughout the city. Another tanker, Asha, has docked in Zawiya with 40 million liters of gasoline. A third tanker, Speta, is expected to arrive in Misrata with 25 million liters of gasoline. The Namibian Ports Authority, or NAMPORT, is investing $4 billion Namibian dollars to expand the port of Lude's Robert Harbour. The goal is to set up a major oil and gas supply base for the country's deep water fields. NAMCOR says an environmental impact assessment study is being conducted for the project and expects to complete it by early next year. The Swedish Energy Agency and the Zambian Ministry of Green Economy and Environment has signed an agreement to trade emissions under the Paris Agreement. The deal will allow both countries work together on projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And that's the summary of your energy news headlines. When Energy Frontiers return, we place a spotlight on a Nigerian Oil and Gas Outlook conference held in Lagos this week. Stay with us. This is Energy Frontiers. The Nigerian Oil and Gas Outlook 2024 Summit brought together industry leaders to discuss the state of the country's energy industry and explore potential solutions for the challenges that the sector faces. The panel of professional speakers explored a wide range of topics that includes how to attract foreign investment, assessing domestic capital, regulatory stability, local content development, and financing Nigeria's energy future. Let's listen.
IOCs are departing from onshore and I would say swamp assets. And that is sending a signal worldwide about the fact that there are insurmountable challenges to operate in those environments. So it becomes difficult. Even the people who are taking on these assets need to understand that they have maturing fields, aging assets, and that staring them in the face are the abandonment liabilities. And many funding parties will look at it and say, why are you taking on this substantial risk, which is actually a capital risk, where you do not have the same structures that the IOCs have to make sure that you can make these things profitable. That is a massive challenge. Nigerian banks, of course, again, were burnt about 10 years ago, about a decade ago, when they just jumped heading into some of the divestments that happened. And right now it's becoming difficult for them to act as well. To even fund is challenging. Look at all the IPOs that they are carrying out right now. So a lot of people that are looking, that have the assets for further development, will not get the funding because they cannot prove that they manage the above ground risk, critical of which is getting that oil from the asset to the point of sale. Okay? Now, then you have the climate change, the transition happening. That's lessened a little bit because if you look at the Ukraine-Russia crisis and what's happening in the Middle East now, you do not have that conversation coming up as a hurdle to getting funding. They actually help guide you through how you can address issues around sustainability.
The solutions lie to some degree at that macro level in terms of what we're signaling, in terms of our decision and focus on actually doing what we say we would do. We've done a lot of work around, we're not bereft of regulations and legislation and policy. It's following through and not moving the goalposts. That's one of the key things. And whether you're talking about it from that governance or the ESG perspective, whatever it is, whether we're talking decarbonization, if we look across from the oil companies, the internationals, the indigenous, we are seeing people taking concrete steps around decarbonization. We're seeing people moving from the oil focus to the energy focus, and in that process, thinking about how to reduce the carbon footprints and all that, which is why, and for time, I really want to bring this conversation into, if I may, kind of digress from your question and hit something on the head. That we have on this table, infra credit, we have NSIA, and you've talked a lot about mobilizing domestic capital. When Ogale is your name, I beg your pardon, so I pronounce it well. She was talking about how you can sequence investments. The reality is that if I don't want to play in downstream, I don't want to play in downstream. If I want to play in upstream, that's what I want to do. So it's not about start from here, go there and go there. We need this country to be running on all cylinders where it comes to a heavy industry that builds capacity across different sectors. So it's not all the time we're saying it's power sector that takes the most gas. No, I want to see heavy manufacturing that is competing for the gas volumes. And then it's exporting the output so that when we're talking dollars, we're not only talking about oil. Now, reality, people, we need the oil and gas money to get to that. We need the oil and gas money to deal with power issues. What that means, therefore, is that we must then focus on how do we bring these molecules out of the ground. If everybody is doing CNG, everybody is doing mini LNG, everybody is doing downstream, I beg, where is the gas coming from? This is really important so that we're not casual about this, that even if the world out there is moving away from upstream exploration, like you pointed out rightly, those of us who then have this domestic capital focus, please look at this. This is our reality. Even if you say you don't want to invest in upstream gas, we have NAG. We need to bring the NAG out of the ground so that there is sufficient gas for all these different things we want to do.
So for me, I think I sort of see three main things that need to happen. We need to really strengthen that collaboration without the envy and jealousy and pettiness that's coming into it, that brought about where we've gotten to with local content development. And to do that, I feel that, this sort of three parties, the private sector, government, the NNPC, need to really strengthen the collaboration that exists between these three parties. And the regulators need to sort of think about why they should come together under one regulatory umbrella. I mean, that's why the PIA was enacted. And that's why there was one single Local Content Act. So things around implementation shouldn't be confusing. The executive order, I didn't read it because I just thought, what is this? Why? Why do we have an executive order that is trying to negate the gains of local content development? Because this is the way I saw it, I may be wrong. But like I said, I just think regulation needs to be under one umbrella. The government side the NNPC, the private sector, all of us need to come together and really strengthen our conversations and our collaboration and stop meeting at conferences. I think everyone talked about it on the last panel. We cannot move forward without funding. The IOCs are not going to bring their HQ money anymore. So for me, I think reserves and production, exploration and production is the bedrock. That's the foundation of this industry. And as long as we don't invest in reserve additions and we don't put the money into the land and swamp, we're not going to go anywhere. So people can talk all day about midstream, downstream. It's not going to go anywhere. So for me, I think that's the core of local content development.
About 74% of our energy source in country is from fossil gas. What that means is for Nigeria, fossil fuels remain extremely relevant. And in my opinion, even though my work is about clean energy, I believe that this is the decade to drill like crazy. Drill for gas, drill for oil. We need, number one, the world is still buying. Number two, we need the money to invest in the renewable energy sector. And I often would say that if all oil and gas companies should shut in their wells today, the global economy will go into a tailspin. It's a fact. Yeah. So let's stop painting fossil fuels like, some pariah for investments. The hypocrisy in that sector, particularly from his point about signing the Paris Agreement, then meant IFC money is gone. BlackRock about 2 years ago said, you know what, we're no longer doing fossil investments, we're doing strictly clean energy investments. And then a year after they said, you know what, the margins are too thin, we don't think we're going to sustain that, we're going to still put more money into fossil. But we have challenges with inconsistencies. Again, Audrey spoke to that. 3 years ago, as a nation, we released our energy transition plan. In that plan, objective number 2, the localization of the manufacturing of solar panels and electric vehicles. And somewhere in that plan, we made a commitment that by 2060, all public transportation in Nigeria will run on electric. That plan is 3 years old. This current government is running around investing in CNG for transportation.
Deep water, we will not see money for 5 years. Deep water works under what we call production sharing contracts. These guys will invest their money. Of course, we know how it works, highly inflated cost. They will recover all that money before you start sharing profit. That takes 5 years. So it's very important that many of us, we've had opportunity to engage the government and we told them, look, focus on land and swamp. The issue we have in land and swamp is evacuation and security. The government needs to be bold to address this problem. On where do we go from here? It's very simple. It's either we swim or we sink. Madam, it's either we swim or we sink. The multinationals are divesting. They are focusing on deep water. We know we're not going to get money for 5 years for every deep water project. So what do? Where we need to go is to focus on onshore land and swamp services that will help this country to get out to where we are. And I'm very, I'm in agreement with my brother from Rwanda. We need the oil and gas to fund the renewables. And I will say this finally. You see, when you go and look at the countries that are clamoring mostly for renewable, is Europeans and the Chinese. These two continents, they suffer energy. They don't have energy independence in their continent. If you look at the Europeans, after the second war in the Middle East, they decided and said, look, we don't want to follow Americans to go and fight these wars again. What can we do? The interest in renewable is more about energy independence than saving the environment. We must save the environment, don't doubt me. I'm not saying we should not. But most of the two continents that are driving renewable is to ensure that they have energy independence. The energy independence of Nigeria is oil and gas today.
Still on Nigeria, The executive chairman of the African Energy Chamber, NJ Ayuk, says the country's gas value chain is heavily untapped. He therefore asked the government to start taking decisive actions to exploring and monetizing its resources. NJ Ayuk was speaking at a webinar organized by the Nigeria's Ministry of Petroleum Resources during the week.
We should stop and think and ponder, because the resources under the ground don't mean a damn thing. It's about how we monetize, whether in-country monetization or that which you're going to go for export market. Can't talk about AKK or the Trans-Saharan pipeline all the time without getting it done. It's time for us to really look at that and start focusing on getting the job done and really doing that. And we can do that not just by words but by deeds that meet needs and action. And that comes with how we continue to incentivize the industry. We continue to drive up things. We continue to approve projects. Sometimes approving projects is our biggest dilemma. And that just gives investment and capital a pause. And while a lot has been done over the last year, I want to implore that we shape this discussion into getting more action, into getting things, and also at the same time dealing with how we have a pragmatic, common sense local content that still welcomes investors, but also encourages Nigerians to be a critical part of the value chain of our gas industry. If we do that, if we shape that, then we start seeing real value, where it's not just about the global markets, but the regional markets, and making sure that people pay for gas, and making sure that we don't just subsidize things for subsidizing sake, but also driving those markets that we are able to really meet our true needs. So I'll stop right here, and I look forward to having a more engaging conversation on how we have a solution-based approach to meeting our gas demand, and also really dealing with energy poverty issues. Because at the end of the day, that should be our first obligation in Nigeria, and really driving up that energy growth.
Namibia is raising to be Africa's oil and gas frontier. But how can the country cement its role in the global energy markets? Welcome back to the program. The Namibia Oil and Gas Conference, held a few days ago, brought together over 900 delegates from around the world. These industry leaders discussed strategies for sustainable development and economic growth. Two-day event highlighted various policies and actions within the industry that could create Africa's energy value chain through the development of a sustainable local content framework, including key investment opportunities needed for stronger global partnerships.
I would like to use my keynote address today to highlight 3 issues that I consider to be relevant to the theme of this year. The first issue is that effective management of the Namibian oil and gas resources is a prerequisite to attain a prosperous oil and gas industry for all. The second issue is that international oil companies and oil service companies shall have to play a key role to ensure local prosperity. The third issue is that our national oil company, NAMCOR, must be a meaningful vehicle for state equity participation in petroleum licenses to ensure oil and gas prosperity for all Namibians. We navigate the next step towards oil and gas prosperity in Namibia, and we should be guided by transparency, by equity, and the spirit of collaboration and cooperation.
Ladies and gentlemen, with a unique set of discoveries in deep water that challenge the application of existing technology, Namibia's situation requires collaboration and innovation from the research and development space to deploying new technologies that both add values in terms of commerciality while being cognizant of the net zero emissions. The concerted effort to conclude appraisal and shift the gear to the development have brought to the fore the reality that Namibia could find itself as an exporter of crude oil in the early 2030s, when a number of projects reach their production peaks. Our benchmark have led us to anticipate new build FPSOs with capability to produce between 100,000 and 150,000 barrels of oil per day, as well as storing approximately 1.4 to 2 million barrels of oil, while at the same time also handling gas over 500 million standard cubic feet per day.
So the resource that we have is so much that it made it possible for us to be able to make these principles, because it's the only way we can make use and utilize these resources as we are having them. The main principle that we have made a commitment to, and that's why I'm saying it's easy for us to speak about the roadmap, because we are already implementing that, is that these resources, as we found it, whether it's oil, whether it's gas, it must be used to make Namibia energy independent. That's the first one that we are applying. The work is already being done right now to ensure that the energy security and the dependency of the country in terms of importation of energy should be able to stop shortly. All these resources that we are seeing very high, very light crude oil with very high gas to oil ratios. And with these high GORs that we are seeing in the oil, it means that we need to find a solution for the gas that we are seeing. And this gas mostly should be the first source of a solution, is for us to utilize this gas to produce the baseload power that we lack in this country. Additional to that, the resource must also be used in order for us to diversify the Namibian economy. And again, we go again to the gas solution that we have to find. All the gas that we are finding must be landed on the Namibian shore. Once it's landed on the Namibian shore, we must be able to process it. And through this processing, we then will be able to diversify the economy with the activities that are coming out of there. But while we are ensuring that we are diversifying the economy, we are also cognizant of the fact that we need, as a country, in order for us to grow the economy, we need to earn the export earnings. So we make sure that the field development plans that we are going to negotiate going forward must create a very good balance between industrialization, diversification of the economy, and ensuring that there is export revenue that is coming in.
And finally, the seats are already filling up fast for the African Energy Week 2024, scheduled to take place from November 4 to 8 in Cape Town, South Africa. Join several key heads of states and stakeholders as they seek to tackle energy poverty and addressing Africa's energy challenges. Visit the event website at www.acweek.com to register and secure your spot. You can also get a full view of the speaker lineup and learn more about the summit. And that's how we wrap up this package of Energy Frontiers for you at this time. We appreciate you for making the time to watch the show as always. Remember to follow the program on Frontier Africa Reports website, like all the video editions, send in your comments, and subscribe to our YouTube. Kindly follow us as well across all our social media platforms as indicated. I am Justina Okechukwu, and it's bye for now.